If there's one subgenre that's never really gone out of style, it's dystopian films. These high-concept sci-fi stories manage to say so much about the state of the world and society, and they've been particularly popular recently for no particular reason. Dystopian stories are much more diverse than the usual suspects like 1984 and Fahrenheit 451. Such is the case with 1987's The Running Man, based on the novel of the same name by Richard Bachman, which is a pseudonym for legendary horror author Stephen King. The original movie is the definition of a crowd-pleasing action flick, complete with a charismatic Arnold Schwarzenegger at his absolute best, and a scene-stealing villain performance from Family Feud host Richard Dawson. However, as fun as that action sci-fi classic is, it's not the most accurate adaptation of King's original beloved work. That's a wrong that seasoned action filmmaker Edgar Wright and blockbuster golden boy Glen Powell hope to right with 2025's version of The Running Man. It's Wright's grand return to the action genre that he helped innovate with the likes of Hot Fuzz, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and Baby Driver, after he took a slight break to take a deep dive into horror with Last Night in Soho. With The Running Man, Wright has made one of his most approachable movies yet, which also functions as a more than capable remake that will satisfy those who love the book, fans of the original movie, and those discovering the journey of Ben Richards for the first time.
The Running Man has all the action spectacle that Edgar Wright is known for.
Glen Powell stars as Ben Richards, a hothead with a heart of gold living in a bleak, futuristic dystopia alongside his wife and sick child. Struggling to make ends meet after being blacklisted by most employers, Ben makes the brash decision to become a contestant on The Running Man, America's most popular game show where contestants must survive 30 days on the run while being relentlessly pursued by trained killers known as the Hunters in exchange for $1 billion. As he runs across the country and fights for his life, it doesn't take too long for Ben to realize that the game is rigged against people like him, but maybe it doesn't have to be. Edgar Wright's The Running Man is certainly much closer to the plot of King's original novel, but those who love the 1987 original should still feel right at home in the new flick's rambunctiously comedic tone. While it may not have Jesse Ventura doing calisthenics or a hockey player with the same name as a Mortal Kombat character, it does still have quirky one-liners, some absolutely bonkers action sequences, and a meaningful commentary on how seemingly over-the-top sci-fi worlds aren't as different from the real world as they may seem. The timing of The Running Man really is impeccable, as its biting commentary on the ethics of reality television and how that very same form of entertainment permeates the public zeitgeist makes for quite possibly Wright's most politically charged and challenging movie yet. Ben Richards' cross-country road trip begins with some great world-building of this torturous sci-fi universe before jumping headlong into some very entertaining and inventive action set pieces. Some of these are oneers, including some elaborate drone camera work, which are unlike anything Wright has crafted before, adding a whole new level of verticality from the man who famously strapped himself to the hood of a car for Baby Driver. One sequence involving Michael Cera is essentially an R-rated Home Alone and an absolute blast to watch. Wright's signature elements of impeccably synced-up edits and perfectly timed needle drops also feel right at home in The Running Man's wacky world, even if some of the product placement and pop culture references feel a bit heavy-handed.
Glen Powell is the compelling lead of a packed ensemble in The Running Man.
The Running Man feels like a much different role for Glen Powell, as the Top Gun Maverick star doesn't come across as the charismatic charmer, but rather as a rough and gruff man prone to fisticuffs after spending his days in a system that doesn't give a damn about him or his family. That's not to say he doesn't have a great bravado to him, it's just a very different kind of versatility, closer to the varying forms he took in Hitman. His portrayal as Ben Richards is everything you would want from a dystopian protagonist, with his reasonable challenges to the system being discarded as frivolous by rich executives. Powell is clearly having a blast with his role, and he's not the only one. The aforementioned Cera, and especially Coleman Domingo as the titular program's host, chew up every bit of scenery they're given, with both of them in particular giving the best monologues in the entire movie. They're just a few people in a stacked ensemble, but perhaps it's a bit too big a cast of characters for the movie's own good. Katie O'Brien and William H. Macy stand out as impeccably talented performers who aren't given nearly enough to do in Ben's journey. The same applies to an even greater extent with Josh Brolin and Lee Pace's villains, both of whom feel more like obstacles for Ben to dislike instead of fleshed-out antagonists. Perhaps the most unusual one, though, is Emilia Jones's character, who shows up extremely late into the movie's runtime and suddenly becomes a major driving force for the plot without much development.
The running man sticks the landing. While the characters who aren't Ben Richards have varying degrees of impact, the running man is a raucous good time that will likely please all manner of action fans. Where hardcore fans of the book may take issue is with the movie's ending, which, as previously reported, is markedly different from the books. Even apart from that, the movie's conclusion feels like it's trying to put a happy spin on a much darker, more ambiguous finale. That's not inherently a terrible idea, but the ending's disappointing insistence on definitive answers is jarring, given there was space for more nuance. With a resume that boasts the likes of the Cornetto trilogy, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Baby Driver, and more, Edgar Wright is by far one of the best action filmmakers working in the industry today, which undeniably is going to put added pressure on his ongoing works. The Running Man may not have quite the same level of polish as his pristine filmography, but it's still an ambitious, topical, and relentlessly entertaining flick that absolutely deserves to be seen on the biggest screen possible. All of Wright's movies only get better and better on every rewatch, given the immense attention to detail, and revisits of The Running Man will undoubtedly garner more appreciation for a movie that's already one of the most crowd-pleasing pictures of the year. The Running Man sprints into theaters on November 14.